Welcome to God is Real Medieval Day. Oh, yeah, boys, we're about to have some fun today. Not doing this. Welcome, welcome, welcome. First, we're going to open this.
Few episodes in the
We're going to change my... Oh, sorry. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Let me open the Discord. People can join and do your best medieval accent. Whatever that means. Whatever that means. Do 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 do. Do I ever want to do political videos from Fry Screen? It's a good question, and probably not. I mean, maybe I'm not opposed to particularly doing a political video here or there, but I don't. It's not my primary interest, politics. I got super into it during like COVID, and even during the last election, I kind of got more into it. And I don't like the person I become when I'm hyper politicized. But oh, thank you, Sean. We got Sean in the Discord chat. Medieval times are cool, right? And I got this outfit because I'm going to a Renaissance fair. Today we're actually, weirdly, it's like today we're going to be doing medieval politics in a strange way. I want to talk about, and I don't know what the medieval era is. I don't know if it's like the thousands to the 1300s or the 800s to the 1600s. I don't know what it is. Feudalism might come into play here. We're going to be learning all about the Crusades because there's a modern myth about the Crusades that I want to dispel. And trust me, I will not be congratulatory of the Crusades. That is not the role of this stream, but it's to be nuanced and to be fair and to be accurate is the main goal. For Ice Cream says, do you think Trump is a real Christian? That is a good question. I've never seen him profess the faith particularly. I know he does. He believes in God, which is great. That's a good start. At least he professes belief in God. I've not heard him specifically profess Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. So I'm not sure even if he even is a Christian, to be honest. Right now it kind of sounds like he's some sort of deist or something. But I don't know that much about it. So if you have any input on that, Fry Scream, I'd be interested to find out because I just don't know really, per se. I guess he's Christian. I guess he claims to be Christian. And I don't know if he goes to church or if he, again, what his view on Jesus is. Watch the interview of him confronted to name his favorite Bible verse. Okay. Let's check that out while we wait. And then we're going to get into the Crusades. Trump Bible verse. Again, also, just because you can't name your favorite Bible verse doesn't really mean anything because one, you could have many favorites. Why is this playing?
You've been talking about how it's your favorite.
This is not playing out of my. But if he can't name a single one, he brought Kenneth Copeland to his rally. That seems like a political play. I feel like a lot of the diehard Trumpers probably are big Kenneth fans, is what I would have to guess. That would be my guess. Now I gotta figure out how to get this. I might have to close out of Google and open it again. Unfortunately, for my.
Hi there.
Oh no. Did I not actually change my input? Maybe I didn't. No, I did not.
My name is John Green.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible.
All right.
You've been talking about how it's your favorite book, and you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that.
Hold on. Do, 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 do. Why is this not working? Hold on. Gotta do some. Oh, hello. Okay. Let's fit the screen. Let's bring that into frame. Okay. This is strange. What's going on here? And that should be good. Let me know if there's any problems with that. Okay. Do, 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 do. All right, we'll restart. This is a short video. The shorter the video, by the way, the less I trust it in general. But hey, here we go.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book, and you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into.
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite.
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like.
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible. The whole Bible is an incredible. I joke. Very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
So just like Infamous, Trump believes he can write a book. Even Trump doesn't think he can write a book better than the Bible, which is interesting.
You mentioned
Welcome, Infamous. Welcome, Infamous. Just making a little joke at your expense from last stream. But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to learn about the medieval times, as you can tell by my outfit, as you can't tell by my outfit because you're not in the stream, but now perhaps you can.
Your camera's not.
Yeah, I know. Now perhaps you can.
No.
Really? Oh,
No.
that's strange.
The virtual cam isn't on.
Oh, right, because but now perhaps
There you
you
go.
can. Welcome to my
What were
my
you doing,
dungeon.
LARPing?
My dungeon. I'm LARPing. Oh no, my
Bro was
freaking
broadcasting from heaven.
my thing came off. Yes, I had to travel through heaven to enter back in time, and now I am a medieval bard singing tales of the Crusades. That's what we're doing today. I don't want to get into specifics. Yeah, no, that is concerning. A Trump clip that he doesn't want to say one single verse like John 3:14 or something like that. Although that wouldn't really tell you much either. But yeah, he clearly hasn't read it though. Yeah, does the other guy have a channel? He's very good, and I couldn't keep at his pace when I was on the Discord. All right, I guess you're talking about Infamous. Infamous, do you have a channel or anything you want people to follow you on? Might as well plug that.
Not really. I always thought that I'd make a good YouTuber. I just like too many things.
That doesn't. That's never hurt nobody.
I like debating. I like doing it like this. This is the way I am more. This is the most charismatic I am. Even though that I think a lot of the people who disagree with you wouldn't agree. It, but I also have a very big fondness for narrative storytelling, and I feel like that's what this channel would be about. So a little less confident in that. Already went down the debate route. Don't really care for it.
I'm also losing the luster of debate. It's at the end of the day, it's like it is interesting. I will continue doing it on this channel to whatever extent we do.
I think if you view it as more of a friendship gaining type thing, or like a social thing, that's kind of how Alex O'Connor views it. I think is that he views it as an academic pursuit more than a debate thing.
Well, that's how I see it. I don't have any pretension that I'm going to win any debate, especially because most people have their minds sort of made up. But I think if you go into it with like a dialogue and like a friendship in mind, then you might actually win people over, as long as that's not your goal, it seems like.
Yeah. The big example is Matt Dillahunty and Clint, I can't remember what his name is. Do you know the guy? Clint? Cliff. Yeah, that's his name.
Connectly or something.
Something like that. The one with the son. He has like a fucking son that's like basically just a clone of him.
Cliff Connectly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, like they're I think they're friends at least.
Recently.
Yeah. Oh, recently, really?
Well, not Matt Dillahunty though, but the Cliff and his son got into hot Christian water because they got confronted by, like, usually they go to campuses and they, in a very pastoral way, they just sort of preach the gospel to college students.
I notice a lot of these people do that. They go to colleges and ambush college students.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really an ambush because all he's doing is standing there, and then if people walk up and want to say something, they say something. And I've seen some good conversations. I've seen some bad ones on both sides from them doing that, but that's just what they're used to. It's like a very, like, evangelical, like, just basic. It's not like deep theology or philosophy or anything like that. It's just like, this is the good news. You can follow it or not. We're just preaching the gospel, right? And so then they got confronted at one of these events by a really learned sort of Orthodox guy, and he had a problem with their Protestant view on baptism, where it's like, maybe you could do some water, maybe not, maybe sprinkle it on the head, maybe dip in the real point is that you accept Jesus, right? And then the Orthodox guy was like, no, because if you accept Jesus, this is exactly what Jesus said, that you have to get baptized, right? And then the son, Stuart Connectly, quoted Vatican III, which does not exist, as a defense.
To challenge that, with, I mean, I'm surprised Cliff couldn't refute that. There are people who weren't baptized at all who straight up ascended to heaven.
That is the typical. Maybe Cliff did mention that. You know, I wasn't so interested in that quote unquote controversy. It was a lot of most of the reaction videos I saw were just like Orthodox and Catholics beating up on Protestants because this is the perfect opportunity. It was sort of like a quintessential moment to do that. But yes, that is one of the major things that's quoted, is the thief on the cross Jesus saying to him, "You'll be with me today in the kingdom of heaven." Obviously,
now,
that guy
to be
wasn't
fair, there's
baptized.
no proof that he.
Well, that's another
he
point.
Wasn't baptized.
That would be my response as an Orthodox. How do you know he wasn't baptized? It seems like he knows that Jesus is God. Maybe he got baptized.
That could be the reason he's up there too, is that he's a thief, but also he lives in Israel, and obviously Jesus spent his whole life going around, preaching his word. So, like, how do you know he wasn't? A lot of the crowd weren't baptized, but a lot of them were. So, it could also be like that. But even in that case where the thief is exhumed from the claim,
yes,
you kind of have the thing where it's like, we have people who weren't baptized that were literally brought into heaven bodily. Right. So, like, baptism clearly isn't like the necessary thing to go into heaven. The necessary thing seems to be God and or Jesus and the Holy Spirit.
I mean, obviously that is, at the end of the day, 100%, because God can bring you into heaven. Obviously, Enoch, or if that is the right interpretation, or the thief on the cross, or whatever. But we would, Orthodox would just say, or Catholics would just say, that's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, and I would say that miracles are, when we're talking about miracles, exceptions are rules. That's the thing, is that, like, God is the ultimate authority at the end of the day, and therefore, like, it's kind of like, oh, you have to, like, take out a frying pan before you get a steak, but when we're talking about God, he can just make the steak.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. I think that's a decent way of looking at it. I think you might as personally. I think you might as well get baptized. Sorry, I'm just fixing something. I think you might as well get baptized, but do I think you're going to hell or something if you don't? No, I'm not gonna say that.
It seems like a promise, right? In the same way that all of the other, like your communion, your confirmation, your marriage, it seems like they're all ceremonies as promises to their next step in the devotion to Christ, right?
Yes.
So
Yes. Exactly.
your birth, obviously, you have the words written on your heart, right? That's not really a promise per se, but it's more of a
Somewhat. Yeah, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a predetermination, I suppose. Like you have it in there. You can get to Christ. It's more of a possibility that lets you get there. Then you have your baptism, which is basically like everyone around you will help you lead you to Christ, right? So it's more of, I feel like a baptism is more of a promise for someone to help lead you there, because you always have to be baptized by someone.
Yeah, and I think even especially if you believe in the spiritual sort of forces that are described to us in the Bible, it seems like there's some sort of like you want to like put your kid before they can even make the choice into Christ's camp, and I can imagine that would protect them from certain dark spiritual forces to whatever extent it does. So that's why that's one of the reasons why I would do it. But also to at least set them on the right path. Do my part to promise or to lead the child into a life of faith or something like that. It is a nice sign of community. There's always a godfather, and you gather your family together, and the kid gets baptized. I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I kind of view baptism the way I do, is that it seems to be more like a promise to lead the person being baptized closer to Christ than it is for the person itself as a starting of their journey towards Christ. Because people that aren't baptized can find Christ. For instance, people who get baptized later in life, what is it? Not evangelicals. Born again Christian.
Born again, yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And in the chat, Beep Boop says the sacraments are never necessary for salvation, at least in a biblical context. They're rituals and practice to further one's devotion to God. I think there's something to that, but I wouldn't say they're not necessary. I think if you have the understanding of the sacraments for what they are, as like devotional to God and all that, then it is somewhat necessary, because if you're not doing it, then what are you saying? Like, well, I'm not that.
I think
devoted.
They're necessary if they're possible. I think they're. I think
sure.
They're necessary if they're possible. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you believe in Christ and you are able to get baptized, you have to get baptized. You know what I mean?
Something along those lines. Yeah.
Like, that's kind of what I think it is. Like, because otherwise you're just like, because obviously then you have the exclusion of the circumstances where you couldn't get baptized, because then you're just like, oh well, what if you couldn't get baptized? It's like, well, okay, he takes that into account, and it's like, okay, well, what if I guess there's what if you don't get baptized? And it's like, okay, well, we've already addressed that it's not necessary to get baptized. It's just that if you're aware that you can get baptized and you believe in Christ, you have to.
Right.
The thief wasn't aware of that, for instance. If he wasn't baptized, right, he wasn't aware or made aware of God. But when he was trapped on the cross, it's not like he could have gotten down and going for a baptism.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is interesting. Sean linked us, and we are going to watch some fun videos. I got a couple lined up that don't have to do with Donald Trump. Mostly Baldwin the Fourth and a little bit of like overall Crusades history. Which I don't even know I don't know what the medieval time is. Obviously, I bought this outfit for a Renaissance fair, which is different than medieval, but we're just doing what we're doing today. We're just doing whatever we're doing today. But Sean did link us this little ditty by Thomas Aquinas.
Ditty?
Well, not that ditty. The medieval ditty. What is on kingship? De Regno. To the King of Cyrus by Thomas Aquinas. And this is just an interesting, we obviously won't read this entire thing, but Book 1, Chapter 1, what is meant by the word king? Because it is hard to know. Like, how does a medieval person perceive a king? Like, it seems somewhat foreign to us.
So like an anointed leader of men?
Yeah, something like that. But this is what Thomas is going to say. So the first step in our undertaking, got to understand the word, the term, king. In all things which are ordered towards an end, wherein this or that course may be adopted, some directive principle is needed through which the due end may be reached by the most direct route. For example, a ship which moves in different directions according to the impulse of the changing winds would never reach its destination were it not brought to port by the skill of the pilot. Now, or captain, I guess we would probably say now. Now, man has
think of the ship as the fucking country, and think of the captain as the
exactly.
The
so it is a little more like Thomas Aquinas is based, bro. It's a little more like detailed and nuanced than you would think. Oh well, medieval people.
This is nuanced at all, actually.
God chose the king, so we gotta follow the king. No, Thomas is like, well, large structures, anything that moves, according to sort of like, chaos or can go this way or that. There's got to be some directive principle, and you think about it. Oh yeah, there really does have to be a directive principle, and we even have that in our governments today. Of course, nothing's changed. But this is how so now man has an end to which his whole life and all his actions are ordered, for man is an intelligent agent, and is clearly part of an intelligent agent to act in view of an end. Men also adopt different methods in proceeding towards their proposed end, as the diversity of men's pursuits and actions clearly indicates. Consequently, man needs some directive principle to guide him towards his end. Thomas Aquinas says, to be sure, the light of reason is placed by nature in every man to guide his acts. Wherefore, this is interesting, if man were intended to live alone, as many animals do, he would require no other guide to his end. Each man would be a king unto himself under God, the highest king, inasmuch as he would direct himself in his acts by the light of reason given from him on high. Yet it is natural for man, more than any other animal, to be a social and political animal. And then he's gonna build his whole thing, I think, off of basically that. So it's very interesting. I love Thomas Aquinas. I think that's a great. I can't see anything wrong with this reasoning. What were you about? Oh, the drip. Thank you, Numenon. We're doing medieval day today, so I'm busting out my my cloak, my little. Can't really see my shirt. My little medieval shirt. I accidentally did green on green, so I kind of look like Peter Pan, but whatever. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Continue, Infamous.
I don't know. I kind of think that this is a kind of. I actually don't think this is a very deep view of what a king is or how to serve God. Like, I feel like this is a very surface level view.
And why is that?
It just seems very intuitive. Like, it doesn't seem very deep. It doesn't seem like it takes a lot of logical steps to compare the two.
Yeah, but that's the great thing about great insight is that, I should have thought of that.
Well, yeah, I think therefore I am is pretty fucking,
Yeah, but I couldn't have come up with that.
You do. That's the point of it.
No, but I couldn't have formulated that. I mean, I know, obviously, it's like supposed to be the only thing that's self-evident. But like to formulate that, put it into words, like I don't know, I couldn't. Because I never even considered that until I had heard about it in like college, like philosophy or whatever, like freshman college philosophy.
I'll put it to you like this: if two dudes high on the couch can think of it, I think I can think of it.
Is that what Descartes was? A high guy on the couch?
So
can two dudes high on the couch think of that? I don't think they could. I think they think of dumber stuff than that.
It's just in different words, like, dude, are you real?
Dude, are you real? Yo, that's true. I mean, that does come up a lot. Like, is this a simulation, bro? If Joe Rogan can think of it, then fair enough. Right. But given that we always like to divorce ourselves from our historical context, we don't know how ingrained that type of philosophy is into our like subconscious thought processes and conscious ones, where those
probably
types
not
of
much of it.
high
I just think
thoughts.
That one is.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. So like that only might be a high thought because it's so well understood by us on a cultural level. Okay, so Numenon, also, do you think all people deserve to vote? What if a large voting bloc consistently makes horrible decisions? Well, horrible according to whose standard? Because what you're saying is, well, if you could know that, then probably nobody deserves to vote.
Horrible in terms of like what
who gets
God
to decide?
of you.
Yeah, but who decides that? So that would be my question. So if you want to say like, oh well, we should
Consensus of
stop.
scholars.
Well, we should stop these people from voting because they consistently vote for the wrong thing. It's like, okay, fair enough. Get those people out. Well, now these people are not voting optimally according to the standard that we created for who gets to vote. So we should get them out too. Okay, we'll get them out. And then suddenly you're moving the goalpost and moving it more and more from like maybe the extreme radicals or something into like a more moderate, into a larger corpus of people that should not be able to vote because maybe they're not as crazy and bad at voting as the first people we outlawed, but they're certainly not optimal, and we clearly know the optimal way to vote or what the optimal policies and laws should be. So why let anybody vote? And then suddenly you're in an authoritarian society. So I think we should allow, at least for now, I think everybody should be allowed to vote. Because nobody knows what the perfect optimal social pattern and laws should be.
So I won't lie. I think you're viewing this in the opposite direction.
Okay.
We don't grant everyone the right to vote. We don't.
Well,
we just don't do that.
Unless
we
they
literally don't. Children can't vote.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
There are certain cognitive levels in which we don't allow you to vote.
Okay.
Right? Now, usually in the past, it was because of military service, right? Men were the only ones allowed to vote.
Right.
Now, I disagree with that, but it's not like it's not historical. There are limitations on voting everywhere, right? If you're mentally impaired, for instance, if you're like in an asylum, you're not allowed to vote.
Yeah, if you've committed a felony, you're not allowed to vote.
Yeah, if you're in prison, you're not allowed to vote.
Right.
Now,
which I do disagree with, for the record. But anyway,
you disagree with that?
If you're
strange.
A felon, I struggle to see why that should prevent you from voting for the rest of your life. Maybe if you're currently in prison, that makes sense.
That's
but in America, that's what okay. In America, if you've ever been in prison for a felony, you are not allowed to vote. Yeah, which is awful.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. But I would say that, like, I think that restrictions of voting should come down to, let's say, and obviously I'm going to frame this in a way to where the society that I would approach this in would have universal education, right? I'm talking they would all have the same standard of education, all the same opportunity from the child throughout their life. Yeah. So, like, they'd be able to get it later on in life if they really needed to. Mm-hmm. I would limit it to education. That's what I would do. I would limit it to education as a way to, like, make sure you know all the facts. I'm not saying that you can't have the same views, right? Obviously,
you want all the voters to be educated voters. I mean, that makes sense.
I just want them to know the issues in which they're voting in. That's all I want. I don't care if they think that, like, slavery should be back. As long as they know what the economics of slavery are, they can vote on that. Right?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's a reasonable view, I think.
Yeah, but, like, I definitely don't want to put that in, like, let's say modern day America, right? Because it just wouldn't work, because not everyone has the same access to education as other people. Or I think some people might view that as a little bit authoritarian, because you're talking about, like,
I would call it authoritarian. Because it creates like
introduce it now,
it would create like an ontological divide between, like, the lower class and the upper class, and, like, only the upper class would essentially get to vote. And you go, like, well, that doesn't seem right.
Now you're an oligarchy.
Yeah.
I agree, and that's why I would only make it so if there's a standard education system,
and it would destroy populism.
Yeah,
which I like.
Would.
Which I like.
Yeah. I think if there's a standard education system in a society where everyone gets the same access to education, and then you have to get certain, let's say, certs, like certificates to be able to vote at maybe even certain levels. Who knows? Like, maybe you can vote on certain issues at some points, maybe you can't vote at other issues, like bigger issues. Who knows? I think that a tiered system, a gradient system like that might be better than the system where it's like you can vote on everything.
That is hypothetically what our electoral college is. That's why the electoral vote is the one that matters, because it's supposed to be the educated or the whatever. I don't know how they choose the electoral college. It could be totally corrupt. It could be whatever. It doesn't seem like it, because it does go back and forth all the time. It doesn't I've never heard of it being corrupted. I don't even know who they are, how they choose them. But
Just
that is
wait
the
until Trump
that
gets
is the
there, dude.
point
Apparently,
of that.
all of them will be corrupt.
Yeah, if Trump figures out. So far, they've been good to him. So, but if he figures,
Yeah, if they're bad, but if they're bad to him,
the
they're
way I
corrupt,
understand
like,
that it
yeah.
works is the Electoral College is strongly advised to vote according to the popular vote in the region they sort of like preside over, but they don't have to. So they can override if they really feel like the populace is making the wrong decision in their region. They can override that, and that happens all the time, and that's why you get a difference between the Electoral College and the popular vote, which is interesting. And I think that's what happened
Also,
in the first Trump election.
It is. Yeah.
The Electoral College
also, by
voted
the
for
way,
him, but the popular vote didn't. So anyway,
who asked if I had a channel? Was it someone in the Discord?
no, someone in the YouTube chat. I think it was Fry Scream 777.
Oh.
Okay, so Newman on the voting thing. If some voting blocks shouldn't be allowed to vote, then who stops the voters from oppressing the non-voters? I completely agree. That would be a major problem. Then that would create this like sort of class divide, or however you chose to an
It might if
education
education
divide.
wasn't universally available, but
Yeah,
if education is universally available, you can always start businesses. You can have the
Right.
knowledge to be able to affect the economy. Like there's just as much power up as there is power down.
Yeah. So then American says too many low information voters. There should be an IQ test and a basic political understanding test to be able to vote. Also, only those who pay
I
taxes.
agree with the second one. I don't agree with the first one.
Yeah, IQ doesn't usually those are kind of flawed. It kind of tests a very specific thing. It's like, are you good at
It's
logical
mainly,
problem
like,
solving? It doesn't really test like if
Yeah,
you're a
it's
smart
logic
person.
and math.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's logic and math. It's not politics.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, some
Or,
kind
I
of
mean, it might
basic
have some
political
economics, but,
understanding. Yeah. Also, only those who pay taxes or if you have served. Yeah, I think paying taxes.
I think if you have served, even if you're a felon, you should be able to, or even if you like, okay. Right now, a change I'd make in America, because it seems so obvious to make if in the system we're talking about. In America,
yeah,
if you're a felon and you choose to serve, I think you should be able to vote. You should be able to get that right back.
Yeah,
That's
I think
a small improvement. I don't think it
think
should ever
even
be a
if
thing. But
even if you don't serve, I just feel like once you're out
yeah,
of
I
prison,
agree.
it's like, what are we trying to do? Are we trying to alienate these people forever? I understand
Yeah,
you
like,
have
why
to have
shouldn't they
like
be
some
able
kind of
to-
record of them being in prison. That already makes it harder to get jobs. But it's like suddenly they're not. They don't have the same rights as every other American citizen. It's like, well, that's just recidivism rates just go up the wazoo probably from that. Not that they
Democracy
care
is
so
deeply
much,
rooted.
but yeah,
Democracy is deeply rooted in
let's see.
cultural relativism.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that might be true.
I think the formation of it. Yeah.
I love this, Sean. I've met a few people like this, and I'm not gonna put this on Sean per se. He's free to deny it, but I have a sneaking suspicion that Sean wants the monarchy back, and that is not as crazy as it sounds originally. Honestly, the perfect way to rule any sort of like system, any sort of government society would be a righteous king, if you think about it. But then the problem is you only get a righteous king, if ever, for his personal lifetime, and then it all just falls apart. So you have
monarchy.
You can't. But
monarchy is golden fascism.
Golden fascism. Yeah.
That's literally
fascism
all
by
it is.
the
It's fantasy fascism. Like
monarchy. Yeah. So, but then. Yes, it is.
Like view Hitler as a king.
So a
now
righteous,
you have a monarchy.
No, literally, yeah. Or Stalin or whatever. But clearly those people weren't righteous. So, if you had like freaking literal Jesus running the state, that would be awesome. Maybe even like, I don't know, Richard the Lionheart. Oh, hey, look, a segue. A perfect segue into.
Also, Sean said no, I don't want the monarchy back.
Okay, good. Actually, I wouldn't care if you did. Oh, Dave Regno has an argument against monarchy. Wait, we should read that first. That sounds interesting. Okay, looks like we can actually find it. The absolute demerits of tyranny, which is interesting. So it looks like Aquinas is going to delineate between monarchy and tyranny, whereas Hitler might be a tyrant, but a monarch might be something completely different.
Well, it's against it, so I think they're going to say the same thing.
The absolute, maybe. Okay, it's actually, these links aren't clickable, so it will be hard to find, unfortunately. This is funny. Now, in founding a city or kingdom, the first step is the choice, if any be given, of its location. A temperate region should be chosen, for the inhabitants derive many advantages for a temperate climate. That's hilarious. There's like tips for starting your own. That seems so foreign right now that anyone could start their own little
He's
like
talking about it like
country
a fucking
or city.
Minecraft world.
Yeah, yeah, literally. It is like a Minecraft world. After deciding on the locality of the kingdom, the king must select a site suitable for building a city. That's awesome. Cool. Well, Sean, if you can find the link specifically to him decrying, Aquinas says that the kingdom's nature reflects the nature of the king. If there's a good kingdom, the kingdom will be good. If there's a good king, the kingdom will be good, and vice versa. I agree with that. That's what I was kind of saying. Like, if we could somehow establish a righteous king with a righteous kingdom, that would seem to be the best way to rule. But like you said, it is impossible to find a good king. That makes sense. Okay, we got some action in the chat here. They should grant electoral votes based on the percentage of the vote won in each state. For example, state A is 5 EVs, electoral votes. Candidate A gets 50%, candidate B gets 48%, A gets 3, B gets 2. Interesting. That would be interesting. But again, it would kind of go again. Then it would make it just the popular vote what matters. But I see what you're saying.
I mean, democracy is the popular vote that matters.
Yeah, but we don't live in it. We live in a republic, not a democracy. So
you live in both. You live in a republical democracy.
A democratic republic, but which really isn't a democracy, because a pure democracy would be that everybody gets one vote, like the people choose the policy. But that's not what we live in. We
I mean, it is because you elect representatives.
We elect representatives on the local level, but the representatives don't have to listen to the local people, and they often don't. And then even on the highest level,
people get elected are by the people.
So they are by the
people to get them.
But the people are not voting for policy and laws, which is the purpose of the government.
I mean, that's the purpose of the democracy if we're just talking about pure democracy. But the thing is with this system is that, the people vote for you. So either you're going to agree with the majority of those people because that's the person that you voted for. The rest of them were voted out, so they clearly didn't agree with the majority. Or you're going to lie to them and say that you agree with them and then get into office and then just disagree with them and not be a true representative. That's the only way you can disagree with those people.
That's what happens all the time.
I agree, and I think both outcomes are bad.
Yeah. American. We can let's get American up here. Yeah, sweet.
Yep.
Yo, what's up, American? I agree with your sentiments in the chat there. I do think right now constitutional republic is sort of the only way, or democratic republic, whatever you want to call it. Any other comments on that front?
Yeah, no. I believe that the constitutional republic, in the sense that we have with 3 branches of government, is good. I mean, like for a monarchy, for example, the executive branch is supposed to act as a sort of monarchy with one person at the helm, but it's not just like a monarchy where there's only an executive branch, right?
Right.
So there's checks and balances.
Yeah, the checks.
So
and
I don't know. I think that we live in the perfect system. I also believe in the electoral college.
I do too.
Being the primary way.
You guys think you live in a perfect system?
Well, I didn't say perfect, but
I think we live in.
It's as good as it gets.
I do too.
I think we live in the closest to perfect. I'm not saying perfect, but it's definitely better. I mean, it's existed.
I think it is the best option for sure right now.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, American? You said it's existed. What?
I was gonna say, as like a constitutional republic, we're the longest constitutional republic to exist. Like,
right.
As the Constitution, as our Constitution, it's the single longest.
You're also the largest constitutional republic that ever existed.
Our Constitution also, well, it was partially written because of the French Revolution and a lot of the ideas going around in there. But then also our Constitution became it sort of set the standard for constitutions all around the world for all the countries that, decided to enact the
French Revolution came after the American Revolution.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one of them.
At least the my understanding, at least the Enlightenment French thought
Not
and
the one with the
European thought in
guillotine and
general
cake.
contributed. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if France's constitution is based off of ours in a weird way, if they even have a constitution. I don't really know much about it, but yeah, I think our founding fathers get a lot of flack these days. I think they were some of the smartest people in history, and some of the holiest people in history. But anyway, besides the point, some of them, not all of them. And I'm not saying they did everything right. Like they didn't do bad things. I'm not saying that. But I think they deserve a lot of credit for setting up a system that is more fair than any other system in history. So. Oh yeah. Okay. This will be fun. You guys are gonna like this. The Crusades. Okay. Does anyone know anything about the Crusades other than the sort of like modern myth that it was like a purely colonial power grab by the papacy over the poor, feeble, Islamic Middle East?
I mean, I didn't know about it being Islamic, but
okay.
Are you talking about why it came to be from like the Islamic attacks prior to it for like centuries?
Yeah, and I think and it is a little more. There is nuance to that, but yes, the First Crusade, it does seem, was an actual reaction to a violent attack, what would you call that? An aggravating, I don't know, pattern of behavior by the Islamic world against Christian settlements.
The Crusades seem to be the medieval version of what happened at 9/11 and the retaliation of what America did after the fact.
And you might think that. I think that's the modern myth. Because it's not, the Christians didn't exactly win. And I guess we didn't exactly win against Iran, but we did get everything that the evil, whatever, corporatist colonialists wanted. So in a sense, they did win. But
in the same way that the
it's
church
actually,
got what they want.
it's not clear. The church really didn't get what it wanted. At the end of the day, the Islamic world actually won the Crusades, and it's pretty obvious.
I think what also people like don't understand is that prior to the Crusades, a lot of Middle Eastern territory was Christian.
Yes,
and there was rapid Muslim expansion and devastation into Christian lands for like a very long time before the First Crusade was ever even launched.
Oh yeah. And that's a little bit. We're gonna watch this crash course history, and then we're gonna get into one of the coolest, in my opinion. I don't know. Have you guys seen the movie Kingdom of Heaven?
Yes,
it's an incredible movie about I think the single coolest character
episodes in the history of the
from the Crusades, called Baldwin IV, the leper crusader king, and he became the king of Jerusalem at like 16 years old.
Oh, I have seen clips of that movie.
It's a sick movie.
It looks fun.
It's a sick movie. So we're going to see how much of that is true and what the real history is behind that and stuff like that. But first, let's get a little overview of the Crusades, because it's fun.
This is Crash Course World History, and today we're going to talk about the Crusades. Let's start by saying that initially the Crusades were not a holy war on the part of Europeans against Islam, but in important ways the Crusades were driven by religious faith. Mr. Green, religion causes all wars. Imagine no religion. I'm going to cut you off right there before you violate copyright me from the past, but as usual, you're wrong. Simple readings of history are rarely sufficient. By the way, when did my handwriting get so much better? I mean, if the Crusades had been brought on by the lightning-fast rise of the Islamic Empire and a desire to keep in Christian hands the land of Jesus, then they would have started in the 8th century. But early Islamic dynasties like the Umayyads and the Abbasids were perfectly happy with Christians and Jews living among them as long as they paid a tax. And plus, the Christian pilgrimage business was awesome for the Islamic Empire's economy. But then a new group of Muslims, the Seljuk Turks, moved into the region, and they sacked the holy cities and made it much more difficult for Christians to make their pilgrimages. And while they quickly realized their mistake, it was already too late. The Byzantines, who'd had their literal asses kicked at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, felt the threat and called upon the West for help. So the first official crusade began with a call to arms by Pope Urban II in 1095 CE. This was partly because Urban wanted to unite Europe, and he'd figured out the lesson the rest of us learned from alien invasion movies. The best way to get people to unite is to give them a common enemy. So Urban called on all the bickering knights and nobility of Europe, and he saith unto his people, "Let us go forth and help the Byzantines, because then maybe they will acknowledge my awesomeness and get rid of their stupid not having me as Pope thing. And while we're at it, let's liberate Jerusalem." I'm paraphrasing, by the way. Shifting the focus to Jerusalem was really important because the Crusades were not primarily military operations. They were pilgrimages. Theologically, Christianity didn't have an idea of a holy war. Like, war might be just, but fighting wasn't something that got you into heaven. But
that's wrong. That's fucking wrong.
All right, let's hear it. Why do you think that?
The Jews.
And
there's rules
elaborate.
for engagement of war.
Yeah, that's exactly what just war theory is. But where do we have the concept of jihad?
What are you talking about, jihad? I'm not talking about jihad. I'm
Well,
talking about
jihad,
no
holy
concept
war.
of like holy war.
There's
is that what jihad means? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Jihad means holy war, and the reason it's such a powerful, I won't call it jihad anymore, just not to bring in that whatever confusion, but the reason holy war is so powerful in other traditions is that there's like, you can think of it in the Viking Norse tradition. It's the sense that being successful in battle gets you spiritual goods or gets you into heaven. Whereas in Christianity, that does not exist. Only faith alone gets you into heaven. No, not really. I mean, unless you can find it.
Yeah,
but in the theology,
like, for instance, right?
where would you
remember? Yeah. Remember the verse we talked about how God didn't like that he didn't slay the animals and everything.
Yeah. So what does that have to do with his salvation?
War.
Yeah.
Well, okay, he did something he didn't like. That affects your salvation.
Yeah, I think that would be more fair to say that like not following God's will would affect your, I don't know, salvation or spiritual goods
and God
or something like
willed
that.
a few holy wars, especially on the part of Jerusalem, his favorite people.
Yeah. But the crucial difference between jihad and the way that and a just war, which is how Christians formulate that, I think starting with Augustine, is that the just war is not just because because it gets you into heaven or because God even sort of like puts his stamp of approval on it. There are just certain things that make a war just, like for instance, defending your territory, defending your land, defending your people, responding to a legitimate act of like violence against you or your country.
Slaying heretics.
No, I don't think that would. Well, we could read Augustine, but I'm pretty sure that would not fall under. I think he would consider that an unjust reason to go to war.
For instance, not the Amalekites, the Canaanites, right? They did nothing to the Jews, but they were monsters.
I'm not sure what the Jewish. Well, one, I wouldn't be so sure that the Amalekites didn't do anything to the Jews, but also
no, the Canaanites.
Oh, sure, the Canaanites. Same thing. I wouldn't be so sure they didn't do anything in their long, complicated history. But regardless, I don't even know what I was talking about. I don't think. Oh yeah, I don't know what the Jewish conception of just war is. We could look into that. That could be interesting. But
just as according
Augustine
to who? Clearly is according to God.
Yeah, but it's not like that. It's a rational. There's like Augustine. It's called the something bellum. Whatever the word for war is in Latin, and he lays out this like massive book, this whole like list of criteria for what would make a war just, and it's almost like a secular list. Like we actually kind of informs the Geneva Convention today. It's a lot like the Geneva Convention, and it's not just like
for holy war to differentiate.
It's not just like
because we just have one.
Okay, I think what the Crash Course guy is giving us is just that you don't get into heaven for killing people. There's no theology around that in Christianity. So this was not framed as a go fight for us, you'll get spiritual goods. It was framed as making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem could bring you spiritual goods. That might bring you spiritual goods. And by the way, Jerusalem is being like held captive by the violent Turks, right? So if you want to make the pilgrimage, you have to fight for the land, right? So that it's a little bit of a nuance. Maybe it's not that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this was a holy war. I'm not saying that. I disagree with the fact that he said there was no concept of holy war in the Bible. Okay. Because there definitely was. Like there's rules about engagement in war on behalf of God. I can't think of any kind of a holier war.
Sure. Yeah, there were wars that God commanded that were fought on behalf of God. So I get that. Jus in bello,
is there instructions
right?
to make new ones? I don't know about that.
Jus ad bellum and jus in bello. But yeah, theologically, it is different than the idea of jihad, which is that this is your duty to fight in order to get whatever 70 virgins in heaven. I know that's from a hadith, not from the Quran, so I'm not going to get into all that. But
is actually the Quran is
no, the Quran doesn't say anything about 72 virgins. But the thing is, hadiths are like meant to be followed. So those are the first order account. That's basically like honestly, the Quran is kind of like Jesus, and the Hadiths are kind of like the Gospels and the New Testament.
Sean,
So
we were talking about lawmaking, but now we're on to the Crusades.
now we're on to the Crusades. Yeah. Sure.
Basically, we're just talking about the fact that was holy war a thing, as in jihad's type of holy war, informed in the Bible. Laws should be discovered, not made. Laws are made by like it depends on the law that you're talking about. Like, we could define a thing that just happens as a law, but we can also make laws. All the rules of chess are laws we made.
Yeah, I could see that. So, interesting. Okay, we'll continue with this overview of the Crusades.
Urban had the key insight to pitch the crusade as a pilgrimage with a touch of warring on the side. I do the same thing to my kid every night. I'm not feeding you dinner featuring animal crackers. I'm feeding you animal crackers featuring dinner. Oh, it's time for the open letter?
Oh, no. I don't know why he does this. He just goes on like a...
One last myth to dispel. The Crusades
just talked about animal crackers for a minute and a half in the middle of the video, which is...
not an example of early European colonization of the Middle East, even if they did create some European-ish kingdoms there for a while. That's a much later post- and anti-colonialist view that comes, at least in part, from a Marxist reading of history. In the case of the Crusades, it was argued the knights who went adventuring in the Levant were the second and third sons of wealthy nobles who, because of European inheritance rules, had little to look forward to by staying in Europe, and lots to gain in terms of plunder by going to the east. Cool theory, bro, but it's not true. First, most of the people who responded to the call to crusade weren't knights at all. They were poor people. And secondly, most of the nobles who did go crusading were lords of estates, not their wastrel kids. But more importantly, that analysis ignores religious motivations. We've approached religions as historical phenomena, thinking about how, for instance, the capricious environment of Mesopotamia led to a capricious cadre of Mesopotamian gods. But just as the world shapes religion, religion also shapes the world. And some modern historians might ignore religious motivations, but medieval crusaders sure as hell didn't. I mean, when people came up with that idiom, they clearly thought hell was for sure. To the crusaders, they were taking up arms to protect Christ and his kingdom. And what better way to show your devotion to God than putting a cross on your sleeve, spending 5 to 6 times your annual income to outfit yourself and all your horses, and heading for the Holy Land. So when these people cried out, "God wills it," to explain their reasons for going, we should do them the favor of believing them. And the results of the First Crusade seem to indicate that God had willed it, following the lead of roving preachers with names like Peter the Rabbit, Peter the Hermit. Stan, you're always making history less cool. Fine. Following preachers like Peter the Hermit, thousands of peasants and nobles alike volunteered for the First Crusade. It got off to kind of a rough start because pilgrims kept robbing those they'd encounter along the way. Plus, there was no real leader, so there were constant rivalries between nobles about who could supply the most troops. Notable among the notables were Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Toronto, and Raymond of Toulouse. But despite the rivalries and the disorganization, the Crusaders were remarkably, some would say miraculously, successful. By the time they arrived in the Levant, they were fighting not against the Seljuk Turks, but against Fatimid Egyptians who had captured the Holy Land from the Seljuks, thereby making the Turks none too pleased with the Egyptians. At Antioch, the Crusaders reversed a seemingly hopeless situation when a peasant found the spear that had pierced Christ's side hidden under a church, thereby raising morale enough to win the day. And then they did the impossible. They took Jerusalem, securing it for Christendom and famously killing a lot of people in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, the Crusaders succeeded in part because the Turkish Muslims, who were Sunnis, did not step up to help the Egyptians, who were Shia. But that kind of complicated inter-Islamic rivalry gets in the way of the awesome narrative. The Christians just saw it as a miracle. So by 1100 CE, European nobles held...
In a weird way, it's not a miracle in the sense of like something supernatural happening or like God stepping into the natural, or like there was a normal reason for the fact that the smaller number of Christians could defeat the Sunnis in Egypt. And you could say that reason is because the Shias did not step up to help them. And it's like that was kind of just presented as like, a historical detail that explains how the Christians were able to win the crusade. But it's also
indicative. I hate the loose definitions of miracles in Christianity. I hate, in religion in general, I hate it. Like, it can either be something that's incredibly rare or something that is actually magic, and you can use them interchangeably, and people do so. And it's very annoying.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I mean, if it's something incredibly rare, it has to be like impossibly rare to be qualified as a miracle per se.
But people think being cured of cancer and going to remission is a miracle.
Oh, I think
like, you know what I mean?
I think that could definitely be a miracle. Because only when it is when it's like third stage cancer and the doctor's like, you got 3 weeks left to live, and then a bunch of people pray over them, and then they have a vision of Jesus, and then they're healed. Then it's like, well, what else do you call that? I don't really know.
Remission.
That would be the simple. I mean, that is what happened. It's remission by way of miracle, is what I would say. But regardless of that, so I'm not even calling this a miracle. The fact that the smaller number of Christians who are like divided and whatever were able to defeat the Muslims. It's just like sort of the nature of the two parties. Like, so we'll see that the Muslims unify a lot more under this specific king, Saladin, and then they're able to actually defeat the Christians in almost every battle. But as something that is fractured and like divided and fighting against itself, like the Sunnis and the Shias saw themselves as like, enemies almost. They still do to an extent. Maybe not so much as like Sunnis versus Christians, but obviously enough that the Shia wouldn't even help the Sunnis in this sort of battle. And that's just like the way that ideas influence entire nations. And that is such a minor theological drift between Sunni and Shia. It's like way more minor, as far as I understand, than the drift between Orthodox and Catholic. But for some reason, well, we'll see. The Catholic and the Orthodox don't get along for long. But it seems like all these sort of different Christian denominations slash whatever sects were able to come together to fight this battle in some way, even though they weren't totally unified. And so it's just like whichever system is more unified is going to have a higher chance of winning. And that's why monotheism makes more sense than polytheism, because it points to the most unity. It like allows the system to have a unification, a connection between all the different parts. Whereas if you have like 15 different gods that are all on the same ontological level, then it's like, oh, do I worship the god of war, or do I worship the god of love, or do I worship the god of the sun or the sea or something like that? You get all confused and you get divided against each other. So anyway, that's my little ramble on that point. Okay, let's continue.
Both Antioch and Jerusalem as Latin Christian kingdoms. I say Latin to make the point that there were lots of Christians living in these cities before the Crusaders arrived. They just weren't Catholic, they were Orthodox, a point that will become relevant shortly. We're going to skip the Second Crusade because it bores me and move on to the Third Crusade because it's the famous one. Broadly speaking, the Third Crusade was a European response to the emergence of a new Islamic power, neither Turkish nor Abbasid. The Egyptian, although he was really a Kurd, Sultan al-Malik al-Nasser Salah el-Din Yusuf, better known to the West as Saladin. Saladin, having consolidated his power in Egypt, sought to expand by taking Damascus and eventually Jerusalem, which he did successfully because he was an amazing general. And then the loss of Jerusalem caused Pope Gregory VIII to call for a Third Crusade. Three of the most important kings in Europe answered the call: Philip, cowardly schemer II of France, Richard, Lionheart I of England, and Frederick, I am going to drown anticlimactically on the journey while trying to bathe in a river, Barbarossa, of the not holy, not Roman, and not imperial Holy Roman Empire. Both Richard and Saladin were great generals who earned the respect of their troops, and while from the European perspective the crusade was a failure because they didn't take Jerusalem, it did radically change crusading forever by making Egypt a target. Richard understood that his best chance to take Jerusalem involved first taking Egypt, but he couldn't convince any crusaders to join him because Egypt had a lot less religious value to Christians than Jerusalem. So Richard was forced to call off the crusade early, but if he had just hung around until Easter of 1192, he would have seen Saladin die. And then Richard probably could have fulfilled all his crusading dreams, but then we wouldn't have needed the Fourth Crusade. Although crusading continued through the 14th century, mostly with an emphasis on North Africa and not the Holy Land, the Fourth Crusade is the last one we'll focus on because it was the crazy one. Let's go to the thought bubble. So a lot of people volunteered for the Fourth Crusade, more than 35,000, and the generals didn't want to march them all the way across Anatolia because they knew from experience that it was A, dangerous, and B, hot. So they decided to go by boat, which necessitated the building of the largest naval fleet Europe had seen since the Roman Empire. The Venetians built 500 ships, but then only 11,000 crusaders actually made it down to Venice because oh, I meant to go, but I had a thing come up, etc. There wasn't enough money to pay for those boats, so the Venetians made the crusaders a deal. help us capture the rebellious city of Zara, and we'll ferry you to Anatolia. This was a smidge problematic, crusading-wise, because Zara was a Christian city, but the Crusaders agreed to help, resulting in the Pope excommunicating both them and the Venetians. Then, after the Crusaders failed to take Zara and were still broke, a would-be Byzantine emperor named Alexius III promised the Crusaders that he would pay them if they helped him out, so the excommunicated Catholic Crusaders fought on behalf of the Orthodox Alexius, who soon became emperor in Constantinople. But it took Alexius a while to come up with the money he'd promised the Crusaders, so they were waiting around in Constantinople, and then Alexius was suddenly dethroned by the awesomely named Murtzophlus, leaving the Crusaders stuck in Constantinople with no money. Christian warriors couldn't very well sack the largest city in Christendom, could they? Well, it turns out they could, and boy, did they. They took all the wealth they could find, killed and raped Christians as they went, stole the statues of horses that now adorn St. Mark's Cathedral in Venice, and retook exactly none of the Holy Land. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So you'd think this disaster would discredit the whole notion of crusading, right? No. Instead, it legitimized the idea that crusading didn't have to be about pilgrimage, that any enemies of the Catholic Church were fair game. Also, the Fourth Crusade pretty much doomed the Byzantine Empire, which never really recovered. Constantinople, a shadow of its former self, was conquered by the Turks in 1453. So ultimately, the Crusades were a total...
Isn't that fun? And that's exactly what I was talking about, where I was giving the Muslims some slack for not being able to get along and work together, and that's why they lost the First Crusade, and that exact same reason is why the Christians lost the Fourth Crusade, and probably many after that, and destroyed one of the great capitals of Christendom, Byzantine. And it was this sort of infighting, this turning on each other, which you can't have internal parts of a single system working against each other. That is cancer. That's what cancer is in your body. And so the fighting, the literal bloodshed between the Catholics and the Orthodox in this weird, disjointed Fourth Crusade caused the real loss of Christendom in the Middle East, which is, crazy. It's wild how that history works. And so to see the Crusades, the point of this kind of like overview is to see the Crusades as like some sort of, like he said, post-Marxist, with this post-Marxist like lens of, it was like, rich white Europeans colonizing the Middle East. That's not really what it was at all. In fact, the most disastrous crusade was rich white Europeans colonizing themselves, not even colonizing, brutalizing and murdering and stealing from themselves. And it's not like they were fighting some useless, like weak, nomadic tribes. They're fighting a genuine empire, which was threatening their borders and their settlements. So anyway, just to dispel a couple of rumors about like what the Crusades were exactly. I'm not supporting them. I'm not saying they're good. I'm not saying they were necessary. Maybe the first one was. Maybe some of them were. But in the case of the fourth one, it was a complete disaster for everybody involved and totally, unholy. I would call it an unjust war, perhaps. So anyway, just a little background on the Crusades. And yeah. Let's maybe go to Baldwin now and learn about Baldwin IV. One of the absolute coolest guys in history, in my opinion. He was 23 years old when he was passed, when he died, and that means he was commanding his army in his teens and his early 20s, which is just insane. Imagine, I can't even command, I don't know, my coworker at the pizza shop, and he's commanding an army. It's incredible.
Crusades are so tragic as William of Tyre's discovery that his pupil, Prince Baldwin, the future king of Jerusalem, was suffering from leprosy. And yet, Baldwin IV proved to be a strong and highly capable ruler who defended his kingdom from its greatest enemy, Saladin.
What the? Okay.
In 1170, Amalric, king of Jerusalem, selected William, the future Archbishop of Tyre, to be the tutor of his son and heir, Prince Baldwin. In his chronicle, William writes, The boy, then about 9 years old, was accordingly committed to my care to be instructed and nurtured in liberal studies. While he was under my charge, I devoted myself to my royal pupil with vigilant care and watched over him with the solicitude befitting his exalted position. He was playing one day with his companions of noble rank when they began, as playful boys often do, to pinch each other's arms and hands with their nails. The other boys gave evidence of pain by their outcries, but Baldwin, although his comrades did not spare him, endured it altogether too patiently, as if he felt nothing. At first, I supposed that it proceeded from his capacity for endurance and not from his lack of sensitivity, but when I called him over, I discovered that his right arm and hand were partially numb. The lad's father was informed of his condition, and physicians were consulted. It is impossible to refrain from tears while speaking of this great misfortune. William tells us that, despite Baldwin's illness, he showed incredible promise as a young prince. He was keenly intelligent, and already an excellent horseman. He loved history, had a rather quiet personality, but took much interest in the organization and governance of the kingdom. Baldwin was barely 13 when his father, King Almoric, a wise and capable ruler, died in 1174. The nobles and clergy of the High Court gathered together, and on July 15th, 1174, 75 years to the day since the First Crusade captured Jerusalem, Baldwin IV was crowned King of Jerusalem in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Because of his young age, Baldwin would at first have a regent. This role went to Raymond III, Count of Tripoli. Raymond and the kingdom's other leading men knew that Baldwin, as a leper, would never marry and produce heirs. To address the issue of the succession, Raymond married Baldwin's sister, Princess Sibylla, to William Longsword, Marquis of Montferrand, in 1176.
William Longsword. That sounds like a porn name or something. Okay. Fair enough.
As cousin to both the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of France, Longsword was a politically excellent choice as Sibylla's one-day consort. The marital alliance arranged by Raymond was as sound as Baldwin II's wedding of his daughter Melisande to Count Fulk of Anjou.
Sean said, I hope the new pope calls for a 10th crusade.
Yes, Sean. Bring them back. Bring back the crusade. I want to see a crusade against the I want to see a crusade against the aliens. That's what I want to see.
Okay, well,
Space crusade.
Hey, that's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. Warhammer 40k.
I know.
Warhammer 40k is literally that.
It's literally that. I know, and Dune pretty much. But anyway.
No. Like the Crusaders are the inspiration for the Warhammer Marines.
Got you.
Like, you know, they have the Emperor emblazoned on their armor. Like like for the Emperor.
Black Templars from Beep. That's
the Black Templars are the 100% like Crusaders in 40k.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They literally kill heretics and only heretics. They don't concern themselves with anything else.
That's so funny. Yeah, the Dune is more like it's actually based on jihad. They literally call it jihad, but that's why the names are more Arabic and stuff like that. But it's based on all this stuff, really. It's funny. I don't know if you guys ever read Dune or interested in the story or anything, but I loved them, read them all, and I was surprised to see that J.R.R. Tolkien read Dune, the first book, and he hated it. He absolutely hated it.
Well, I mean, he wrote Western fiction.
Yeah, exactly, and he was concerned with the theology presented by Dune, because it was Paul Atreides was this Messiah king, but he obviously killed. But his desire was, the point of the book was that every Messiah is dangerous. Every Messiah will lead to death and destruction. And Tolkien obviously disagreed with that because there's one Messiah.
But Tolkien was wrong because, but Tolkien was wrong literally because he's not the Messiah. That's like an explicit thing in the books, is that he's a mistake. The thing that was prophesized
did not happen.
The thing that was prophesized was meant to be impossible.
Yeah. Right.
It's like saying one day a square circle will appear, and then it fucking did. They're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is interesting. I think Tolkien was probably like an old sort of grumpy man at that point as well. By the time that book came out in like the late 50s. Tolkien was writing in like the 30s, 40s. I mean, so anyway.
I do love this part that Beep's mentioning. The funniest part about Warhammer 40k is that the Emperor viewed religion as a plague and eradicated it from Earthrider's conquest just for his soldiers to create a religion around him.
Interesting. That is interesting.
He also made an exception for one faction, which was the tech priests. They were just really, really, really good at making guns. So like,
so he was like, all right.
Yeah, so they were like, it's fine, you can worship the tech. By the way, I'm the Omnissiah. I'm the best at making guns. So worship me. And they're like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
That is wild, man. Interesting. Okay, well, let's see if I wonder if there's a Baldwin cognate or whatever, not cognate, but parallel in Warhammer. Let me know. Let's get
Within a
him.
year, William Longsword fell ill and died, leaving the 17-year-old Sibylla pregnant with his child. This only compounded the problem, for Longsword's death extinguished the idea that he might step in as the strong leader the kingdom required when Baldwin the Leper eventually died. Sibylla's pregnancy meant that her next husband would have to accept that his own children would be unlikely to inherit the kingdom, and few of Christendom's great noblemen would be eager to enter into such an arrangement. Amid all of these dynastic uncertainties, factions were developing within the court of Jerusalem. One faction was led by Count Raymond of Tripoli. Another faction was developing around Baldwin's mother, and Reynald of Châtillon, the powerful lord of the kingdom's most important eastern border territory, Transjordan. However, when Raymond's regency ended in 1176, on Baldwin's 15th birthday, the young king began to prove himself quite capable of holding his own. Baldwin IV's first great challenge would come from the east. Saladin, Sultan of Egypt and Damascus, was the greatest enemy faced by the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In the late summer of 1176, Saladin was an enormously powerful figure in the Saracen world. He had just defeated one of his rivals, Saif ad-Din, when he realized that a large crusader force, under the recently arrived Count Philip of Flanders, was attacking Harim in northern Syria near Antioch. Saladin used this opportunity to attack the Kingdom of Jerusalem in the south. It was the autumn of 1177, and Saladin, with an enormous army numbering in the tens of thousands, suddenly appeared before the crusader city of Ascalon. King Baldwin IV at once assembled what troops he could find. Many of the kingdom's knights had gone north to join Philip of Flanders. So heavily outnumbered, Baldwin at first retreated into the walls of Ascalon, leaving Saladin's enormous army free to ravage and pillage the kingdom, almost to the very walls of Jerusalem itself. It must have been a terrifying scene, as Saladin's men torched villages and peasants fled in panic from the Sultan's marauding troops. The citizens of Jerusalem huddled.
Have you heard the theory? It's not something I believe, but have you heard the theory that Baldwin is actually the reincarnation of Alexander the Great, but he could only stay on Earth for so long? That's why he had. What's it called?
Like he died around the same age and stuff like that.
He died around the same age, but not only that, it's why he had the disease, because no man could kill him.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. No, I like that. I mean, I always like to find. I don't believe in reincarnation, obviously, but I do think that history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it definitely rhymes. And so I think every now and again, a great person, an Alexander the Great archetype or something like that crops up, and I could see Baldwin definitely being one of those.
Didn't Alexander
seems like
meet Diogenes at some point? I could be completely misremembering that. But I feel like Alexander the Great met him and said, if I was to be anyone, I would want to be. If I wasn't Alexander the Great, I would want to be Diogenes.
Diogenes. Wow, that's interesting. I don't know much about Diogenes, so I can't really speak to that. But
he's just a prick.
Oh, really? Was he a philosopher?
Just a philosopher. Yeah, okay, yeah. So Diogenes famously walked in on. Is it Plato? I don't think it's Plato. Sean, you'll know if I'm wrong. I'm gonna go with Plato for now.
Yeah.
He walked in on him when he famously said that a human is a featherless biped.
Oh yeah.
And Diogenes walked in with a plucked chicken and says, "Behold, a man."
Yeah, that's awesome. I've heard that. That is awesome. I love that.
He's also just homeless and never took charity.
Right, right, right.
He lived
That is
like
pretty
how
badass.
Jesus wanted to live.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty badass. I do like those old school Platonists, or I guess he probably was a Diogenist or something like that, where they just like,
Yeah, Alexander the Great famously walked up to him and says, he asked for advice and he gave him good advice, and then he was like, "What do you want in return? I want you to get out of. I want you to. What is it?
to get out of my room, mom."
No, it was like, "I want you to stop creating shade."
Oh.
And then Alexander the Great was like, if I wanted to be any man, if I was not Alexander the Great, I would want to be Diogenes.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, he seems cool. King Beef says King Baldwin goes hard. We should have a movie night and watch Kingdom of Heaven. He literally won a war at 16 years old. I know. That's what I'm thinking. That's why I'm watching this, because I don't know if I can watch a movie on stream. I mean, maybe we could just do it in the Discord. But can you watch a movie on stream?
You can. I wouldn't stream it, but
yeah.
Also, here's the thing. The thing that was quoted. Diogenes raised himself up a little when he saw so many people coming towards him. I fixed his eyes upon Alexander, and when the monarch addressed him, he was already king at this point. When the monarch addressed him with greetings and asked if he wanted anything, Diogenes said, "Yes, stand a little out of my son." It is said that Alexander was so struck by this and admired such haughtiness and grandeur of a man who had nothing but scorn for him that he said to his followers, who were laughing and jesting about the philosopher, they went away. But truly, if I were not Alexander, I wish I were Diogenes.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, that is sweet.
I fucking love Diogenes, dude.
He's cool. I love those sort of... It definitely gives me Socrates vibes, which is awesome. Love that whole vibe. That whole I don't give a F, you know. Doesn't care about nothing. Just philosophy and sunlight. That's freaking awesome. Yeah, so maybe we should do a little Discord Kingdom of Heaven stream, or not stream, but just like hang out. I'll set that up. Think about that. When the best.
You know what else we should do?
What's that?
We should 100% have a Warhammer day.
I'm down.
Introduce you to Warhammer.
Yeah. I mean, we can do a Warhammer
because
thing.
Pete knows Warhammer. I know Warhammer.
Yeah. We can do a little Warhammer action. I don't know. Is the game playable? Like, is it fun, or would we be looking at sort of the game is in person, right? Don't you have to make like little?
The game is in person if you're talking about the game is in person if you're talking about armies. However, there are video games that you can play to get a very, very good feel of the universe.
Oh, okay, cool.
The one that I would play personally to get a really good grasp of the universe is Dark Tide.
Dark Tide.
It's basically about you being these pieces of shit, nothing people on a planet in a galaxy so small, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because you believe in the Emperor. And the Emperor protects. And you have to fight off this plague of Nurgle, which is like basically disease incarnate.
Interesting.
Or Space Marine 2. Yeah, I feel like Dark Tide is better because it gives you the
Space
perspective
Marine
of a lower person.
Space Marine 2 I've heard of. People said that was really fun. There it is. Space Marine 2. That's the new one, right? Or relatively new? Yeah, last year.
Actually, cool. I have something to put you onto Dark Tide 2. Please look up for me, because you'll hear the techno Christianity shit, right?
Yeah.
Those are the Tyranids. Actually, they're nothing to do with the gods. They're just some weird fucked up thing that people found in space, and we need to kill them immediately.
Yeah.
But look up on YouTube, Disposal Unit.
Okay.
Dark Tide Disposal Unit. Also, yes, I do play tabletop RPGs. Beep. It is actually my job.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're
the
dungeon
first one.
master,
The first
right?
one.
First one. This is just a song, I think.
It is. Yeah, it's a song.
It's a sick song.
It's very quick, but it's good.
Yeah.
What's my army in 40k? I don't really stick to an army.
Yeah, I recently started a D&D game as well with a couple friends. It's fun. We're doing a space thing. It'll be fun.
Spelljammer? Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait for the beat drop on this dude. It's so good.
Disposal unit. Alright. Damn. The nerd.
Those are actually you can pause it. That's the best it gets.
Okay.
That's actually the shit in the background. So it represents humanity's decline after the emperor's leaving, which is kind of like in Christian terms, like the decline of humanity after Jesus.
Right.
Basically, everything would be better after the second coming.
Right.
So it's like you have the build up and like the holy music where they're like, you know, you have your choir. That's the time of the emperor, or like in your case, Jesus. And then all of a sudden, it's like the screeching like halt of progress, and then you have the violent nature of humanity to defend itself, to try and stop the decline as much as it possibly can, right? Through the violent like burning and bombing of the sound.
Yeah.
It's very repellent of evil.
That's very interesting.
In the lore, it's actually it's the tech priests putting like powers on your weapons. They're chanting.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'd say the only thing theologically different than that is that we would say that, or I mean, I would just say, looking at history, that society has not devolved since the departure of Jesus, but rather gotten better.
I mean, when the Antichrist comes.
Sure. Okay. So it's like that period of judgment or whatever.
Yeah, that's what Warhammer takes place in. It takes place in the 41st millennium.
Okay, cool.
Which is like 10,000 years after the Emperor's dead.
Wow.
Or not dead, but...
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. Oh, 40k, huh? That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, Warhammer 40k.
Cool. Let's get into a little bit of Baldwin, because I'm curious about this
also,
battle.
Yeah, you're right.
He
isn't dead. He's just a cosmic battery.
A cosmic battery. That's fun.
Yeah, he sits on the chair, allowing people to travel safely. It's kind of like basically. It is actually very like. After we talked, I realized it is actually very like Jesus. Because how Jesus allows you to get into heaven, the Emperor allows you to get to walk through life,
hyperspace,
basically without fuck.
Yeah, that makes
fucked,
sense.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's very cool. I like it. All right, let's see.
Huddled within the Tower of David, were terrified that Saladin might even take their city. Because Baldwin's army was so small, Saladin was unconcerned about a counterattack. The Sultan felt comfortable allowing his troops to spread out through the countryside. But Baldwin was determined to respond to Saladin's attack with force. The young leper king emerged from Ascalon and prepared to strike back. Baldwin's army was small, but filled with very capable fighters. It included a force of Knights Templar under their Grand Master, Odo of Saint-Amand. Balian of Ibelin and his knights were present as well, along with Reynald of Chatillon and his men from Transjordan. On November 25th, Baldwin caught up with Saladin's host below a hill known as Montgessard. William of Tyre describes the battle that followed. The ranks of fighters on both sides now gradually approached each other, and a battle ensued, which was at first indecisive, but the forces were very unequal. The Christians, however, strengthened by the grace shed upon them from on high, soon began to press on with ever-increasing boldness. Saladin's lines were broken and, after a terrible slaughter, were forced to flee. The Crusader cavalry charges proved devastating to Saladin's forces. The Templars played a particularly important role in this regard, smashing through Saladin's lines and sending his men fleeing in disorder. Baldwin's cavalry chased the scattering enemy all the way to a nearby marsh. According to the chronicler Ibn al-Athir, one group of Crusader knights got so close to Saladin that his own bodyguard of Mamluks had to hold them off. Saladin himself, fearing for his life, scrambled onto a racing camel and fled to safety.
Damn.
The Crusader knights pursued the scattering Saracens until nightfall. The victory was total. Saladin lost the vast bulk of his army, and indeed, barely escaped with his own life. Only the courage of his Mamluk bodyguards, willing to die themselves so that their master could escape, and the swiftness of a racing camel saved his life. Saladin had dangerously underestimated the 16-year-old leper king. Baldwin IV, despite his illness, had rallied a small but formidable force and led them to victory against a dangerous enemy.
Absolutely.
Baldwin was no longer merely a boy king, but now a warrior king, tested and found ready for the challenge of a full-on invasion from the most powerful Saracen enemy ever faced by the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In our next video, Part 2, and the final part in this series on the life of King Baldwin IV, will examine the final portion of the Leper King's reign. Threat to the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Saladin already had firm control of Damascus and was determined to usurp the Zengid power base of Aleppo. To counter Saladin's pressure on the kingdom's eastern frontier, Baldwin, in cooperation with the Knights Templar, began constructing a castle at Jacob's Ford on the Jordan River in October of 1178. The Templars, with their castle at Safad, already had a strong presence in the region and were the logical force to garrison the new castle. Most of the construction was carried out over a 6-month period, while Saladin was besieging Ibn al-Muqaddam at Baalbek. In June of 1179, Saladin invaded the kingdom's lands to the east of Sidon. King Baldwin assembled his army at Tiberias, marching north to stop Saladin's raid. Initially, Saladin's forces were driven off, but the Crusaders were unaware that Saladin had not struck with his main army. Later, Saladin did attack with a much larger force kept in reserve, inflicting severe losses on some of the Crusader forces which were caught unprepared. Among those captured was the Templars' Grand Master, Odo of Saint-Amand, one of the heroes of Montgassard. Saladin followed up this victory by attacking and capturing the castle at Jacob's Ford in August. The Sultan brutally slaughtered the roughly 700 prisoners taken at the castle. But as his army withdrew to Damascus, disease spread among their ranks, killing large numbers of Saladin's men, including 10 of his chief emirs. For the Christians, this was God's vengeance. Meanwhile, Baldwin IV's leprosy was worsening. William of Tyre tells us that each day the signs of the king's disease increased. Baldwin knew well that his own life would not continue much longer, and the urgency of the succession was forefront in his mind. He was determined to arrange a worthy marriage for his sister, Princess Sibylla. He decided in the spring of 1180 to marry Sibylla to Guy of Lusignan, younger brother to the kingdom's new constable, Aymer of Lusignan.
This guy's a character in that movie. We should watch a clip from that movie after that. Okay, VRDVN29. Hello. Wow. Thank you, brother. If you're selling me something, I've noticed this doesn't happen on YouTube, but on Twitch, for low viewer counts, they get spammed by these, like, they're not necessarily bots, but they're like people that are trying to sell you their service.
Yeah, it's the same with Discord.
And on Discord, I guess, too, yeah. So it's yet to be seen whether this guy is one of them or not, but welcome, brother. If he says I am a bot, which is funny. It makes me think you're not a bot. But that might be the most advanced bot move I've ever heard. So you're welcome to stay bot or not, my friend, and welcome to learn and have fun. Guy of Lusignan. That is awesome, bro. Guy of Lusignan is portrayed as an absolute.
Half these guys sound like pasta.
Yeah. Also, it's so hard not to say Guy. And I know a guy in real life whose name is Guy. He's an AI playing 4D chess with me. Well, then you're welcome to, my friend. You're welcome to play 4D chess with me, and I'll engage, and I'll play 5D chess with you. How about that? Guy Fieri, yeah, exactly. From Beep Boop in the chat. Okay.
Guy was a newcomer and rather unknown, and the king's decision came as a shock to many. William of Tyre deeply disapproved of Baldwin's choice, describing Guy as a man with neither the character nor judgment to rule. In explaining Baldwin,
yeah, I can put the link to my Twitch in the description for sure. I can actually right now put it.
The links in your descriptions in your streams.
I'm not like, are you asking if I can? Because I don't know. I don't know if I can.
You should put the Discord and like Twitch in your streams.
The stream description link would be way better.
Yeah.
Beep Boop, I just started streaming on Twitch. Like, this is the second stream I've done that's both Twitch and YouTube. Because I
thought you had to game on Twitch.
No, there's a just chatting. Option. And to be fair, I think in a little bit, I'm gonna start gaming. I'm gonna start playing Elden Ring wearing this hood because it makes me really want to, and I'm gonna keep streaming. So, then I will be gaming on both Twitch and YouTube. But so yeah, I'll put these links in my descriptions next time. But for now, it's just in the chat. Yeah, you're right. It would be smarter to instead of me pasting the link every single time into the chat, probably be better just to have it.
Just
somewhere.
say it's in the Discord.
Yeah,
Or
just,
not in
it's
the
in
Discord.
the
Say it's in the description.
It's in the description. Would be a lot better.
I should also paste the YouTube and Twitch links in the server.
Oh yeah, that'd be good. That would be good. Cool. Yeah, and especially honestly, like, I'm not promoting any sort of like underhanded behavior, but for the chat, when you guys join the Discord or you switch over to Twitch or whatever, it doesn't hurt nobody if you just leave the other one open, muted in the background. Helps push up those that attention a little bit when you're just looking stuff up. It actually on Twitch, it actually has a big difference between having like 3 viewers and 1 or 0 viewers. It actually does promote like visibility a lot better. But hey, you guys are your own people.
Okay.
You guys are your own people. Okay, I can't. Oh wait, we have some. He's not dead. He's just a positive battery. Baldwin, nice. I'll stop Baldwin time. You guys can talk about whatever you want in here. I don't care. I can't even see his message in the chat. Meme channel. We need server emojis too. Nice. Yeah, I don't know what those.
We have some Baldwin emojis.
We could have a Baldwin emoji. Would be pretty sick, actually. It would be pretty dope. That would be a good place to start.
Whenever we ban anyone, we have the hand up meme.
That's right. That's awesome. Hey, VRDVN is on the same page as Sean in the Discord. We need to make our own new crusades. Hey, couldn't agree more with you, brother. Couldn't agree more with you. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. Which obviously you are new to the channel. We're doing Medieval Day because I just bought this outfit for a Renaissance fair I'm going to. And I wanted to wear it on stream. And I also wanted to learn about the Crusades because they're freaking awesome.
Yeah, here's some channel lore. I'm the resident atheist dickhead.
That's right.
He's the resident Christian
dickhead as well. How about that? Yeah. But yes, that is sort of the dynamic between me and Infamous here. And we're not currently crusading against each other, but we'll see if that comes. So, hey, there's Beep in the Twitch. Oh, look at that. You'll love to see it. This is like the Orthodox and the Catholic coming together. Israel should do the next crusade. I think they're well on their way. I think they've been kind of doing that, and vice versa.
What did you say about
jihad versus?
What did you say about Israel?
Vern 29 said Israel should do the next crusade. I think you might have gotten your wish there.
Yeah, I think they've been started that. Just
if I'm fundraising for that, yeah. How about that? I'll link my Patreon and only donate if you want to support the Crusade of Israel. No, I'm kidding. But appreciate you, VRDVN. I don't think I'm monetized on Twitch, so I don't think you actually can support me in that regard. Not that that's really what I would be raising money for anyway, but appreciate you. Oh, this is great. I love seeing the mixture of Twitch and YouTube chats. Makes me know this restream thing is working. Okay. Learn about Raymond III of Tripoli.
Of Guy. William states that the king believed that the Count of Tripoli, Raymond III, and Prince Bohemond III of Antioch intended to dethrone him. By quickly securing the succession, Baldwin made this coup impossible. Guy and Sibylla's marriage deepened the divisions within the upper nobility. Raymond of Tripoli withdrew from the royal court for the next 2 years, while the powerful Ibelin family was equally unhappy with the marriage. The eldest of the Ibelin sons, Baldwin of Ramla, had apparently been Raymond and Bohemond.
I think that was Deuteronomy 3:15 that said, "Thou shalt give missiles to Israel." You're right, Vern. Oh yeah, I know. I don't know why one of them stream tags is enshrouded. I mean, I know why. It's because I was playing Enshrouded at some point. But I guess I never edited the... Because it doesn't let me on Restream, so I got to do it on Twitch, but I'm just not going to do that right now. Anyway.
Choice to marry Sibylla. Meanwhile, Guy and Sibylla became the focal point for the court faction led by King Baldwin's mother, Agnes, which included Reynald of Chatillon and Aymery of Lusignan.
I am wearing
This
a shroud.
pronounced factionalism sprung from the uncertainty and urgency brought
It
on
does
by the
fit.
king's leprosy.
I like it.
In the summer of 1182, King Baldwin the Leper again faced the challenge of an invasion by Saladin. The Sultan took full advantage of his possession of both Egypt and Damascus. Saladin dispatched a contingent from Damascus, which captured 500 villagers near Mount Tabor. Saladin now attacked the kingdom in Galilee. Baldwin kept the Jerusalem army in the field, opposing Saladin's advance. The two forces faced off in a brutal engagement known as the Battle of Belvoir Castle. The weather was crushingly hot, and many died from heat exhaustion on both sides. However, King Baldwin and the Crusaders won the day, repelling Saladin and obliging him to retreat. Saladin ended that campaigning season by launching a naval squadron from Egypt, which he used to attack the important Crusader port of Beirut. Once again, King Baldwin responded rapidly, assembling the land army while the kingdom's fleet was launched from Acre and Tyre. Saladin was forced to withdraw his attack, and Beirut was saved. Saladin spent the autumn attacking his Muslim enemies, the Zengids. King Baldwin took the opportunity of Saladin's absence to raid the Sultan's territories around Damascus. King Baldwin had commanded brilliantly during 1182's hard campaigning, but he and the kingdom's nobles knew that Saladin's immense power would continue to pose a deadly threat. In February 1183, Renaud of Chatillon launched a raid against Saladin into the Red Sea, harassing some of the Sultan's vital trading links. In a move of striking boldness, Renaud and a small force carried several ships in pieces overland across the desert to launch them on the Gulf of Aqaba.
Whoa, what the?
The ships were separated into two squadrons, with one besieging Aqaba.
Can you imagine carrying a ship across a desert to then launch it and launch a naval attack? That's like insane to me. Just carrying a bunch of ship pieces. The ancient world.
A fortress known to the Muslims as the Head of the Sea, while the other raided along the coast of Hijaz. At Ihab, on the western edge of the Red Sea, merchants were captured and goods seized. Saladin was horrified that Renaud could assault such vital trading links so near to Mecca and Medina. He quickly launched a fleet from Cairo to suppress Renaud's campaign. Saladin's admiral, Hussam al-Din Lulu, captured and killed Renaud's men at Aqaba, then pursued the others along the coast. Renaud and a band of his men withdrew, but the rest of his contingent was trapped in a ravine by Hassam's forces after being driven from their ships. Every prisoner taken was executed, for Saladin didn't want anyone with such intimate knowledge of the Red Sea trading ports to make it back alive to the Kingdom of Jerusalem, where their knowledge might be valuable in a future campaign. Saladin cited Renaud's Red Sea campaign as his reason for attacking Kerak in 1183, although we have to keep in mind that Saladin, committed to the jihad, wanted to destroy the Kingdom of Jerusalem regardless of Renaud's activities. That same month, Patriarch Heraclius dispatched a letter to all the great kingdoms of the West, begging for their help in the defense of the Crusader states. The Christians' concerns proved well-founded, for in June of that year, Saladin finally captured Aleppo from the Zengids. Now, the Sultan truly controlled all the territory surrounding the Kingdom of Jerusalem.
Damn.
Meanwhile, Baldwin's illness had gotten much worse. The situation was so serious that the High Court felt it urgent that a new regent be appointed in Baldwin's place. Baldwin selected his brother-in-law, Guy of Lusignan. In September of 1183, Saladin made his next move. Assembling a vast army, the Sultan crossed the Jordan south of the Galilee. The Crusaders were prepared, assembling what William of Tyre describes as the kingdom's largest army in living memory. Under Guy's leadership, the army encamped where they were well supplied with water. Over the course of 9 days, there was fierce sparring between the Christians and Saladin's Ayyubid host. Above all, Saladin wanted to provoke a pitched battle, but Guy would not commit his forces to it, maintaining a defensive posture to limit Saladin's movements. Finally, Saladin gave up and retreated to Damascus. Once again, Saladin had been repelled, but King Baldwin was dissatisfied with Guy's performance. The king felt that Guy had missed a good opportunity to inflict a serious defeat on Saladin. According to William of Tyre, Saladin had been reckless and had left himself open to potential disaster. Dismissing Guy as regent, Baldwin took back the power directly to himself.
Imagine. But you're like 21 years old. You're riddled with leprosy. Your much older brother-in-law has a victory, a military victory against Saladin, one of the great generals of the ancient Arab world. And then as the 21 leprosy addled guy, you go, not good enough. You could have crushed him. You could have defeated him even more. You're no longer the regent. I mean, the balls on this guy. It's incredible. He really is like an Alexander the Great, if you think about it. Winning was not enough. Baldwin literally said, if I were there, we would have crushed him, which is insane. Love it. What energy.
But barely a month after his last attack, Saladin struck again, this time in the eastern border territory of Transjordan. Saladin brought a large army to besiege the great fortress of Kerak, the chief castle of Reynald of Chatillon. Kerak was one of the most strategically crucial strongholds in the kingdom, guarding the eastern approach to Jerusalem and allowing the Crusaders to patrol the roads between Egypt and Damascus. Armed with the true cross, King Baldwin raised his army once again, marching out to relieve Kerak. Day and night, Saladin's trebuchets pounded at Kerak, but the castle was well fortified and prepared for a long resistance. Once Saladin knew that the army of Jerusalem was on the way, he called off the siege and retreated in the first days of December 1183. This latest campaign at Kerak had been brutally difficult for King Baldwin. By now, his leprosy was so debilitating that at one point he had to hand command over to Count Raymond of Tripoli. By early 1185, King Baldwin's condition had become critical. It was clear to all that their long-suffering king would not recover this time. Baldwin assembled the kingdom's barons, asking them to recognize Count Raymond as regent until his own nephew, Baldwin V, son of Sibylla, would be old enough to rule. Should the child Baldwin die early, the kings of France and England, along with the Holy Roman Emperor, were to pass judgment on the succession. Above all, Baldwin IV wanted to be sure that his sister Sibylla and her husband Guy would not take the throne after his death, for by now the king was convinced of their unfitness to reign.
Damn.
At last, on March 16th, 1185, Baldwin IV died in Jerusalem, mourned widely throughout his realm. Despite his leprosy, Baldwin IV of Jerusalem ruled wisely in the most trying of times.
Absolute beast mode. I'm just going to watch one clip, Kingdom of Heaven. And then I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then I'm going to probably play some games. Unless anyone has anything they want to ask or talk about relative to Christianity or the medieval times or the Crusades. So think about that. Let me know. First, we're going to watch... this. King Baldwin meets with Saladin. So sick.
Tell my lord Salahdin that Jerusalem has come.
Beast.
I pray you pull back your cavalry and leave this matter to me.
I pray you retire unharmed to Damascus. Reynald of Chatillon will be punished. I swear it. Withdraw, we will all die here. have terms?
We have terms.
Beast.
I will send you my physicians.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So sick. Absolutely love it. Okay. This movie is so woke, I hate it. Why the... I agree. I don't agree with it being woke, per se. Although, I think I maybe know what you're talking about, because it's, like, super congratulatory of Saladin, which is probably ahistorical. But, why does it have a sex scene? I completely agree with you. That is one of my biggest pet peeves about movies in general, is that every movie has a sex scene. Like, every one. As irrelevant as it is to the plot. It's like a superhero movie, and they got a sex scene. They've got, like, why would this one need that at all? It's a movie about defending Jerusalem from the invading, like, jihadist, or, jihad, that's not a word, is it? Anyway, again, I agree with you. Most movies that have sex scenes do not need to have them at all, and they're always cringe and uncomfortable and weird, especially in a movie like this. I don't know. Even the stop making every movie about gooning. I agree. Even Einstein documentary has sex scene. I haven't seen that, but I'm not surprised. If that's true, that's hilarious. I'm about to look that up. Even the Einstein movie. You know what? Yeah, the you know what did have a couple of them. Was that horrible Christopher Nolan? What's that guy's name? Created the nuclear bomb. Jeez, what is that guy's name? Oppenheimer. There's like a 5-minute sex scene in Oppenheimer. Like, who needed this? Who wanted this? I wanted to learn about a nuke. not learn what Oppenheimer's kinks are. Like, who cares? I agree. The Crusade should be against Netflix. Is there an Einstein documentary with a sex scene? All right. If you're thinking of Genius, the National Geographic series, it does include some dramatized romantic and sexual content, particularly involving Einstein's relationships. That is just ridiculous. That is absurd. No. It's saying you're right. I think you probably saw this. I think you probably saw the Genius series, National Geographic. Oh, cool. Well, you got a link yourself. Albert Einstein and secretary and steamy sexy. Yeah, that's what they were talking about. Genius, the National Geographic. That is so insane. Like, who cares? Whoever once has thought, you know what I want to learn about Albert Einstein? I want to learn how he has sex with a lady. What? Who's ever considered that? Look, here's like a clip. Wait, look, this is a trailer for the movie, and half of it is him. Wait, how do we play this in full? Damn, it's not coming up. Wait, let me look it up on YouTube. I mean, I don't want to watch it, but yeah, there we are. I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. What on earth did I come back to? You just missed all the King Baldwin stuff, Numenon, but then my Twitch chatter here brought up that this movie, the King Baldwin movie, which you might have seen, Kingdom of Heaven, great movie, has a sex scene, and it's like, yeah, why? Like, why? What is the point of that? Who cares about that? In fact, the only purpose that could possibly serve in that movie is to make you uncomfortable. And so then we got on to like even the Albert Einstein documentary has a sex scene, and you're like, what is the why is Hollywood doing this? Alan Turing, they did yap about his relationship, although that was somewhat relevant at least. I don't remember if there was a sex scene, but at least that's like why he was castrated by the British government. So that at least has some relevance. But like Einstein, Kingdom of Heaven, like it doesn't. Yeah. I'm not sure if we should publicly hang them per se, but I get your sentiment. I do understand your sentiment here. Cool. Well, the other thing you walked back on, Newman on, the fact about him finessing his girlfriend was definitely cap. I guess that's the Alan Turing. I don't remember. I don't know about that. What you did walk in on Newman on is the same vibe, same conversations can happen, except in the background, in the foreground rather. Oh, in the Alan Turing movie. Yeah. I'm going to be playing, well, I guess I'm going to be playing Elden Ring. How about that? How about that? I don't know if you guys know this game or like this game, but it feels very in line with my medieval theme for today. So we're going to do that. And I'll be right back because I've got to go to the bathroom too. Even rangers like myself have to go to the bathroom. Okay. I do like Elden Ring. Just give me a second to switch all the stream information, so we're streaming to the right people here. Okay. Well, we can still do that. Actually, that can be the title. Let's throw it in Elden Ring on Twitch. How about that? How about that? Alright, so I'm a bit of an Elden Ring fanatic. I love all these games. All the Bandai Namco Miyazaki games. But Elden Ring's my favorite. And I have a bunch of saves and stuff. Let's get all cloaked up, bro. Let's get all cloaked up for this one. Now I can sit back a little bit. All right. Let's see if my controller works, hopefully. Come on, controller. Get in there. No? Nothing. Oh, that's why. Wasn't even connected. Are there sex scenes in Elden Ring? Only if you try really hard. if you try hard, if you try even harder than it is to have sex in real life, then you can figure that out. But no, there are not sex scenes in Elden Ring. Typically. You can sort of emote and make it look like it. But I'm probably not going to be too interested in that. First, my controller's got to work, so it's the That's the first obstacle here. Alright, might have to exit the game here. There's no guarantee in the age of gay games like Valorant. Is there a sex scene in Valorant? I thought that was like CS:GO or something for League of Legends people. But yeah, there is no guarantee. But the good thing is this is made by like a old Japanese man, so he's not too interested in all that. It's actually got crazy lore and like background and energy and stuff like that. So let's see. It's just a gay version of CS2. That makes sense. That makes sense. I already thought CSGO was already pretty gay. But Rush B. What is it? Rush B. Alright. Alright. Bomb spikes. Alright. Is this not working? Hold on. Something is very wrong here. I'm not sure what. It's a bit frustrating, to be honest. Okay. We're gonna quit the game. We're gonna quit Steam.
Failure at
I hate to say it, but we might even have to restart my computer. So, hopefully you guys will remember me. Remember me for my victories, not my defeats. And I'll come back. But right now, there's just something strange going on with the computer. Okay. Sorry, guys. Stream's going to end for a sec. I will be back, though. If you're interested, come on back. And I'll be happy to have you. So, give me a sec.